With me in the studio at the moment is a man whom I regard as certainly one of the prime influences in the life of Frank Sinatra. In fact, Sinatra reportedly has said, without his encouragement, I very easily might have tossed in the sponge. And I am speaking of Hank Sanicola. Hank, you go back to the big band days with Frank Sinatra, right?
That's right. I worked for the Warner firms first.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I met Frank, and then we wrote a song called This Love of Mine. And then Tommy brought me over to his firms.
Wasn't there another song, Mr. Success? Did you and Frank do that one?
Yeah,
right.
Mr. Success.
Right. Yes.
Mistletoe and Holly, we did together the
Right.
Christmas thing and his Christmas album. And then Tommy brought me over to his firms to be close to Frank and, keep him happy because we were, so close buddies.
How did it happen when Sinatra left the Dorsey Band that you and he contrived to get together?
Well, when Frank was singing with Harry James, we would often get together and we'd go to the Jersey Shore in the summertime with the families and we'd dream.
That's right.
About we were going to form a band. That was the original thing. We thought Frank would form a band and, and I'd be the manager, and which never materialized because when he finally left Tommy, we started to do some dates.
Right.
And we did some theater dates like the State Theater in Hartford,
Right.
and Hartford, and the Providence Theater in Rhode Island, and then the theater in Passaic with Johnny Long. From the Johnny Long thing, we went into the Paramount Theater
I see.
with Benny Goodman that time at New Year's Eve of coming into 1943.
I think of you in the field of personal management, one of the most difficult, involved, and creative fields in the world. There are many singers, Hank. There are many fine singers, many fine performers. But after all, when you and Frank started, he was just a singer. And under your guidance, he became a star of legendary status. How did that happen? What moves did you make?
Well, we're the ones that started the downfall of the band era at that time.
Yes, you did. Indeed. What an answer. That's a complete answer. I had no idea that's what would be what I would get as a reply.
That's what happened. When we started to make it, the band started to fold and the singers came into light.
Right.
Like Dick Hames and Perry Como and guys like that followed Frank, into the field, and then it was no longer a band era, it was a singer's era.
When did you decide that personal management was not your field anymore and you were going back in full-time with your own company?
Barton Music.
Barton Music.
That's one of them. There's Maryville and Sands. There's several companies today. We always had that. I didn't... all the years I was with Frank, we were building these music companies.
Yes.
See? And then in the mid-'60s, that's when I decided, after 28 years or so, 30 years.
28 years, you say?
Actually, I've been with, in the thing, which goes back to about 1935.
Your entire life, virtually, since you were an adult, has been in the music business.
We were like 20 years old, or 19, 20 years old when we started, together.
With this long association
between
you and Sinatra.
It's more like 35 years,
okay.
40 years.
my question to you is this. When you think of Frank Sinatra and everything he's recorded, what song do you think of when you think of Sinatra?
Night and Day.
Night and Day. Our guest on Project Sinatra is Mr. Hank Sanicola. And we have just played his favorite song, and he threw it to me. A long association with Sinatra, I presume, will do that. I do not know how forthright you were in the beginning, but in the interviews and the few talks I have had with him, his answer is always forthright and immediate, and you gave me an immediate answer. Was there a song which he liked and you didn't care for, and you arrived at a compromise, and it was finally recorded, and it didn't make it, or it did make it, Hank?
Oh, there was probably several of those.
Many hundreds, maybe,
it's
that
hard
you
to remember.
wrestled about.
I'd have to think about that.
Okay.
we
2 seconds here.
Many times we had, he would like something I wouldn't, or I would like it and he didn't, like Hey Jealous Lover.
Yes.
Frank did me a favor when he recorded that. That was a fifth side.
In what way, Hank, did he do you a favor?
Well, when we met up at the apartment to decide what songs we're going to do on the record date with Boyle Gilmore of Capitol.
Right.
Capitol had 4 songs, which there was going to be a big project, and the publishing companies were going to put up money behind them, and they were going to send out all 4 sides, like two double record, like with 4 sides.
Yes.
And a big promotion and a portfolio and everything to go with it, and they thought these 4 songs were going to be smashes. So when we got all through talking, at the same time, during this period of deciding what songs to do, I was always saying, we'll do Hey Jealous Lover.
Yes.
And never getting any response, really. So finally, they stood up after they decided the 4 songs. We all stood up, and they were going to walk out the door, and I says, hey, wait a minute. I said, what about Hey Jealous Lover? And I was beginning to get a little hot, because I guess I was about the only guy in the business who could stand up to Frank or talk. We were so close.
Yes.
We would fight and have our arguments,
Right.
And
No 2 definitive individuals can
that's
live long
right.
without an argument once in a while.
And I said, what about Hey Jealous Lover? And Frank looked at Boyle, he looked at me, and they knew the look on my face, I was beginning to boil a little. So they said, oh, okay, make that one up. So
All
that
right.
was made up, and that was the 5th side on the date, and that became #1 on the hit parade.
And that's the
and
one
the
that
other
did it.
songs went down the drain.
All right. The favor done by Frank Sinatra and Boyle Gilmore to Hank Sanicola, we will play right now. Our in-person guest on Project Sinatra has been Mr. Hank Sanicola. At the beginning of this interview, I quoted the man himself. And now, Hank, I must say to you, when I think about the trials, the tribulations, the highs and the lows that you had during your long period with Frank Sinatra, you have been to Sinatra what Colonel Parker has been to Presley. Only you have been in that position longer. Therefore, from now on, Mr. Sanicola, you are General Sanicola.
Not the Colonel.
Not the Colonel. You're one up on the Colonel.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Hank Sanicola.
Okay, nice to be here.
Thank you. Project Sinatra continues.